Dollar, dollar, dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack and flip for my foes. Dollar, 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 dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar, 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 dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yep, what's good, original crew, man? We're back. We got another round of Mr. Ballen. We got the horror mystery. Scotland Yard got dead wrong. Keyword, dead. I'm just playing, man. Y'all know, hey, lately Mr. Ballen been on some, you know what I'm saying? Just want to see if he can kind of keep it up, you know. Let's see if we can get another good one in today. So, with that being said, before we get into it, make sure you check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go if you want to first support. All you have to do is check out down below. Also, if you enjoy today's visuals,
Lock it in with a thumbs up. Don't starve.
all right, man. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's check it out. Let's see what we got cooked up, man. The horror mystery. Scotland Yard got dead wrong. Let's go.
In today's story, you very likely will at some point go, okay, I know where this is going.
Okay.
But you won't, because the ending to this story is so random that it actually took 100 years to piece together what actually happened. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, please bring the like button out hiking with you on Kodiak Island in Alaska, but don't tell them you've secretly stapled a huge raw steak to the outside of their pack. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on...
That's your dog. Nah, I'm finna say so, but that's your dog. He's scratching somewhere up there, scratching. Jay.
Jay, stop, baby.
Come here.
Sit.
Sit. No, sit.
notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story. On the night of January 31st, 1910, an American couple living in London, named Belle and Dr. Harvey Crippen, were hosting a small dinner party for two of their friends. The group had just finished their food, and they were now in the middle of a game called Whist, which is a card game, when suddenly Belle put her cards down, and she stood up to tell a story. And Dr. Crippen saw his wife doing this and kind of knew what was going to happen, and he kind of gestured for her to not tell the story and please sit down and play this game. But she just kind of waved at him dismissively, like, please, leave me alone. I'm going to do what I want to do. Dr. Crippen sighed and just kind of sat back and let this happen. Anywhere they went, he knew his wife had to be the center of attention, and there was just nothing he could do. Dr. Crippen was a pretty passive guy who kind of got walked all over, especially by his wife. He was kind of little, he had big bulging eyes and huge glasses he wore, and his job was he basically sat inside of a dentist's office and mixed medicines for the dentist. And so he was just kind of like this anonymous, forgotten about guy that worked in a back office hidden from the world. Meanwhile, his wife, Belle, is like this beautiful woman, huge personality. She's an aspiring actress and singer, and everywhere they went, everybody loved her and basically didn't notice Dr. Crippen. Also, Belle would basically spend all of Dr. Crippen's money on her very expensive wardrobe. And so Dr. Crippen is just so annoyed. He's sitting on the couch and he's watching as Belle has now stood up in her big flowing pink evening dress, and she's regaling the guests with this big story of hers. And at some point, she just kind of transitions from telling the story to performing this bizarre song and dance routine that was this story. It's like she came up with a play in real time and performed it for the guests. And the dinner guests who were watching this performance, their names were Paul and Clara, they were totally totally entranced by what Belle was doing. They thought it was incredible. Paul and Clara were both theater people like Belle was. Paul was a former comedian, and Clara worked with Belle at their charity, which was called the Music Hall Ladies Guild. And so Dr. Crippen just kind of scowled as the two dinner guests applauded really loudly for Belle's big performance. And Belle, she smiled and kind of giggled and then sat down and said, "Thank you so much." And then, Dr. Crippen, he's thinking, okay, now that she's done with this performance, we can finally play the card game that I really want to play. But Dr. Crippen, after grabbing his cards, looked around and could tell that they were not going to play cards. The big performance by his wife had eaten up all the rest of their time, and now it was too late, and the guests had to leave. Before Dr. Crippen could even stand up to begin picking up in the room to get ready for this visit to end, Belle, his wife, was demanding he go outside and get their guests a horse and carriage to bring them back home. And so Dr. Crippen just kind of put his head down and said, okay. And as he was walking towards the front door to get the horse and carriage, Belle yelled after him, "And don't get one of those cheap ones. Get an expensive one, a nice one." Dr. Crippen just kind of rolled his eyes, but said, okay. And then he walked outside. But despite looking all over the place, there were no nice horse and carriages. It was just the kind of loud, rickety, bad ones that his wife did not want him to get. But after looking all over the place for a full hour and not finding a nice one, Dr. Crippen finally just had to hail one of the bad horse and carriages. He called them over, and then he went back inside, and he told the guests, okay, I got your horse and carriage. And so they came outside, and so did Belle. And Belle's looking at this carriage after this long delay, and it's this terrible carriage, and she just stares at Dr. Crippen, furious. The guests don't seem...
Not next time, but I'm like, next time,
well, you should have went yourself.
Yeah.
That's what you were trying to, yeah.
Yeah, like, go get yourself.
Like, girl, I've been gone for an hour trying to look for a nice...
You know what? This is very much so the bougie wife that with a struggling, like, you don't work. You know what I'm saying? You try to pursue a career. Obviously, you ain't going nowhere. And then you want to be bougie. You want to be all this. You know what I'm saying?
Bossing him
Man up.
Bless his heart.
They just walk down the stairs, they get in their carriage, they say goodbye, and they take off. But the second Dr. Crippen had turned back around, Belle was already back inside their home. And so he knows, as soon as he goes in there, he's going to get yelled at. And so he went inside the home, and in the living room was Belle, arms folded, just staring at him, absolutely furious. And she began laying into him about not only how ridiculous it was that it took him a whole hour to find the carriage, and it was a terrible carriage, something she said not to do, and she told him that he was the reason their whole dinner party had been a total disaster. Even though Dr. Crippen was like, I think it went pretty well. But in Belle's mind, her husband was the reason this party had totally failed. He was boring. He didn't contribute anything. And she told him that she caught that he did not applaud nearly as loudly as Paul and Clara had for her big performance. And that really hurt her feelings. When Dr. Crippen just didn't say anything, he just kind of knew to keep his head down and let his wife talk. When that happened, Belle got so frustrated, she kind of huffed and then turned around and walked over to the mantelpiece, and she took this framed photo that she shamelessly left up in their house that was of her former lover, who she openly had had an affair with.
What?
It was this beautifully handsome, square-jawed prize fighter who, again, Dr. Crippen knew his wife had cheated on him with. And so Belle...
Hell
no. I said no.
Bro.
That's some low down. That's some nasty stuff.
That's dirty, bro.
What?
Your ex and you cheated.
And you got it framed.
She only with
for his
Harvey.
coins.
Yeah.
Cause what?
Like you don't care.
Or
about
the fact that she know that she can walk all over him.
That or both.
Both. Yeah. Both.
I'm more leaning.
I'm leaning to the money.
No, I'm leaning to both.
I'm leaning to the money first.
I'm leaning to both.
And then
because she know he weak.
I'm leaning to both. Yeah. Cause what?
Nah.
Put your foot down.
Man,
She takes this photo and she holds it up and she points right at him and she looks at her husband and says, I can get any man I want. Look right here. I can get him if I want to. I don't need you. But Dr. Crippen was not affected by this.
Yeah.
He was completely used to being treated this way by Belle. And so again, he just stayed silent and took what she was throwing at him. And so again, Belle gets even more frustrated because she's not getting a reaction from Dr. Crippen. She finally just goes, you know what? I'm going to leave you tomorrow. I'm done with you. I can't be with you. It's over. And again, Dr. Crippen just didn't react. I mean, this really was typical behavior for his wife, even this threat of leaving him tomorrow. You know, she had done this before, but never followed through on it. It was just kind of like Dr. Crippen was her punching bag, basically 24/7. And so for now, all Dr. Crippen really wanted was for his wife to just stop ranting and raving so he could just go to bed. He didn't really care what she was saying. Frankly, he wouldn't even care if she did leave him the next day. He was totally unhappy in this marriage, as obviously she was. But he was so scared of scandal, he couldn't bring himself to divorce his wife. But if she actually followed through and left him, he'd be free. The marriage would be over, and it would be her fault.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Crippen just stood there waiting for his wife to finish, but it was clear she had a lot to say. Even after threatening to leave him, she just kept on laying into him about all his faults. And then at some point, Dr. Crippen just totally caught her off guard by interjecting and saying, "Hey, Belle, do you want some whiskey?" And Belle just kind of stopped and stared at her husband inquisitively. And then it was like her whole mood changed, and she was like, "Actually, yeah, I'll take some whiskey." And so Dr. Crippen said, "Great, I'll go make it." And he walked over to the liquor cabinet and he poured both of them a drink. 2 days later, the members of the charity that Belle and Clara, the dinner guest, were a part of, the Music Hall Ladies Guild, they were all sitting in their office in London waiting to start their meeting. But there was a problem. Belle, who was their treasurer and therefore needed to be at this meeting, was not at this meeting. She was late and nobody knew where she was. And so after they sat in this office for a while, just waiting, they finally heard a knock on the door. And so one of the women got up, they opened up the door, and standing outside is Dr. Crippen's assistant, this young woman named Ethel, and she looked kind of frazzled and maybe a little bit out of breath, and she was carrying a letter and a package in her hands. And so Ethel would tell the woman who opened the door that she was here on behalf of Dr. Crippen and also Belle. And so the woman who opened the door said, "Okay, come on in." And so Ethel walked into the office and she placed the letter and the package on the table. And then she quickly turned around and left.
Okay.
After she was gone, the guild members kind of looked at each other confused and then just reached out and they grabbed the letter. They opened it up and they read it. And the letter was written by Dr. Crippen, and he was telling the members of this guild that unfortunately one of Belle's family members back in America had fallen ill, and so Belle had to go back to America and take care of this person, and she'd be gone for at least several months. And then when they opened...
What you said for?
Because in my head...
Because remember what he said in the beginning.
Listen, why because what he said, it'll take 100...
No, he said...
Oh, you think it may go one way, but you'll be because what I'm thinking right now, because you know his job is mixing
something with
his job is mixing medicines and stuff in the dentist, right?
Yeah.
And he just interject like, "You want some whiskey?" Because he tired of her shit. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm thinking. He probably, but then that's where your mind will go. Did your mind go there?
My mind didn't go there because I remember what he said in the beginning.
But I forgot what he said in the beginning.
It's a good thing to keep open as an observation, because just because he said that doesn't mean
because I'm thinking, honey, he got rid. He like, I'm tired.
He might have got rid of it.
That's him putting his foot down. He said, "I'm tired of your shit. I'm about to go. You about to go." I don't know. Okay.
And take care of this person, and she'd be gone for at least several months. And then when they opened up the package that Ethel had dropped off, that contained the guild's checkbook and also their ledger. That way they'd be able to go out and find a new treasurer to replace Belle. And so when they had finished reading this letter and seeing the contents of this package, the members of this guild just kind of looked at each other, not really sure what to do. You know, it seemed odd that Belle had not told them she was doing this, that she had left without saying goodbye. But at the same time, it seemed like whatever she was dealing with in America was very serious. And so they decided the only thing they could do was to just hire a temporary treasurer and wait for Belle to come back. About 3 weeks later, Clara and the rest of the Ladies Guild members hosted their annual ball. And like always, they invited Belle, as well as her husband, Dr. Crippen, even though they knew, you know, this invitation was kind of a formality because Belle was still in America.
Right.
But Dr. Crippen would show up to this ball, and he would not show up alone. And it caused a bit of an outrage. On Dr. Crippen's arm was very obviously his date, Ethel, his assistant, the young woman who had dropped off that letter and the package to the members of the guild about Belle's sudden departure.
Okay.
Clara stared incredulously at Dr. Crippen and Ethel as they kind of swayed around the room dancing. I mean, Clara just could not understand what was going through Dr. Crippen's head. How could he possibly think it was appropriate to so...
Why the fuck would he even show up with her?
Right?
That's-
Maybe in
That's
his...
gonna make everybody think
Everyone
something.
like speculate and think like, okay, one, Belle didn't tell us she was leaving, and maybe how her.
I don't think they will go jump into that.
Well,
that degree, but it's still like, why the?
Yeah, they may not jump into that per se, but it's kind of like, one is disrespectful. Do your wife know that you here with your assistant?
Y'all knew she was cheating on me. Hell, y'all knew.
Somebody knew.
Y'all knew.
You can't tell me y'all did.
Women, come on, like let's be honest though. Women keep a closed mouth when a woman cheating, but soon they find out the nigga cheating.
I don't condone cheating.
They hell no. We gonna go tell Belle, but Belle cheat. Well, Belle, you know it ain't right, but I ain't gonna say nothing. Come on now, see, let's be real. That do be the truth though.
I don't condone.
They might be like, girl, it ain't right, but I ain't gonna say nothing to him, and she don't. She's girl code. See, I'm a girl's girl.
I'm gonna let you know.
Look. I'm a girl's girl.
I'm gonna let you know what you're doing is wrong, and I expect.
But you ain't gonna say nothing though.
I expect for you to,
But you ain't gonna say nothing to him. But let you find out that he creeping, you gonna make sure you go tell Belle.
Who is he to me?
Stop it.
You know what I'm saying?
Cause that's how it go down.
Like, I be out of place going to like you ain't my friend.
Y'all do be like that though.
Kind of swayed around the room dancing. I mean, Clara just could not understand what was going through Dr. Crippen's head. How could he possibly think it was appropriate to so openly cheat on his wife around all of his wife's friends and in such a public place? It just seemed unfathomable that anybody would do what Dr. Crippen was doing. And so that night, Clara and the other members of the Ladies Guild, they got together and they decided that, because of Dr. Crippen's obvious infidelity, they could not invite him to be a part of anything to do with the Ladies Guild, at least not until they talked to Belle again when she got back.
Okay.
But Belle didn't come back. And she never wrote to any of the members of the guild or any of her friends. She just disappeared. And on March 20th, 1910, so roughly 2 months after Belle supposedly fled to America, Dr. Crippen came out and said he had just gotten some terrible news. It would turn out his wife, Belle, had fallen ill while in America, and she had died. When Clara and the rest of the Ladies Guild members heard about this, their disgust at Dr. Crippen's cheating quickly turned into suspicion that maybe he had something to do with Belle's early demise. So one of the members of this guild went to the police and reported Belle missing. However, at first, the police were not inclined to pursue this case because from their perspective, there was no evidence of a crime committed here. All they knew was this woman, Belle, had died in America, supposedly from natural causes. And so the only thing that was contrary to that were Belle's friends who basically were saying, well, maybe she was murdered by her husband because her husband was cheating on her. And the police were like, that doesn't line up. Just because he was cheating on her does not mean he killed her. But Belle's friends continued to keep the pressure on police, and finally, after 3 months, the police would assign a detective. His name was Walter Dew, and Inspector Dew had been a detective for more than 20 years, and he had even worked on the very famous serial killer case, Jack the Ripper, and had been one of the people who actually found the last body, although the Jack the Ripper case had gone unsolved. But coming out of that investigation, Walter Dew had really developed a great reputation as a really good detective. And so to have him lead this case was a big deal. And so on the afternoon of July 6th, 1910, so roughly 5 months after Belle had gone missing, Inspector Dew, as one of his first things he would do for this case, went to Dr. Crippen's house to ask him about his wife. Now, Inspector Dew expected that Dr. Crippen would tell him the same story he had told everybody else about Belle, which is, she had to go to America to take care of this sick relative, and while she was over there, unfortunately, Belle passed away. But what Dr. Crippen ultimately told Inspector Dew was not that. Now, at first, Inspector Dew just asked Dr. Crippen a lot of basic questions about his wife. But Dr. Crippen seemed really awkward as he answered these questions. He actually almost seemed really embarrassed. And Inspector Dew clearly noticed this, but just kept on asking these routine questions and just allowed Dr. Crippen to act however he was going to act. But at some point, Dr. Crippen just stopped answering the questions altogether, and he paused for a minute with his head in his hands, and then he took off his glasses, he put them on the table, and then he looked up at Inspector Dew, and he said, I should just tell you the truth. Belle isn't dead. Dr. Crippen told the inspector that the day following that dinner party they hosted with Paul and Clara, that morning when Dr. Crippen woke up, his wife was gone, and all her things were gone too. She had packed up in the middle of the night and left without telling him where she was going. And so Dr. Crippen realized his wife had finally made good on the threat to leave him. Dr. Crippen said he lied about what happened to Belle because he was trying to avoid a scandal. He said that, while Belle was horrible to him personally and really mistreated him, she was really kind of amazing with everybody else, and everybody else loved her. And so Dr. Crippen really believed that lying about this would ultimately save her reputation and his own. So it was a win-win. And once Dr. Crippen was relatively sure Belle was not going to be coming back, that she really had left him for good, that was when he began openly dating Ethel, because he had actually been in love with his assistant Ethel for a long time. And he felt like now, with his wife out of the picture, he could finally love her out in the open, even though he admitted, nobody would actually understand the dynamic here because everybody else thinks Belle is over in America.
It
doesn't
it's
seem
not
right.
adding up.
It seems a little fishy, and it's too soon. It was too soon for you to just turn around and be like...
Not necessarily too soon, because the relationship was over before the relationship even
That's
ended.
not what I'm talking about. I'm saying the fact that you show up with her in public, with Ethel,
again,
knowing that you had just...
Again...
you just telling people, hey, my wife is in America.
Honestly,
okay, they thinking she coming back. This.
Honestly, if they had divorced the next day, he was gone. He would have tried to holler at Ethel straight up out the rip. The relationship was over anyways.
Right. No.
But I get what you're saying. Too soon to pop out in public.
I'm just saying too soon to pop out in public and not thinking that people would speculate something. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is true on that end. But hell, y'all knew she was cheating. I probably knew she. And then why you trying to save her reputation? Well, hell, she already cheated on you with her ex.
Yeah, that's the only thing I don't get, because you keep saying a scandal, but at the end of the day, it would have looked bad on her.
And you know how messy people was back then.
Yeah.
Folks knew she had cheated on him.
I guess he didn't want people to be like, gossiping all around town and stuff.
But
I don't know.
they 9 times out of 10.
Because if she cheated with a man, I'm pretty sure they got her.
Cheating scandals weren't a secret back then. People knew.
They was stalking.
Y'all know I be seeing Krypton wife over here with that man. Mm-hmm. Especially if he found out, 9 times out of 10, other people knew already. So it's not like nowadays where.
So that's why I'm trying to figure out, if people did know that she probably was out here doing things, why y'all so surprised that Yeah. So I don't know. That's crazy.
It's a good chance of possibility people knew she cheated.
Yeah,
too.
Would actually understand the dynamic here, because everybody else thinks Belle is over in America, and here I am cheating on her. But, Dr. Crippen insisted to the inspector that this was the truth. He was not cheating on Belle. He didn't have anything to do with her disappearance. She left of her own accord, and here he was. And so after Dr. Crippen explained all this to the inspector, Dr. Crippen just put his face in his hands and just looked so ashamed and embarrassed, to the point where Inspector Dew really believed Dr. Crippen. I mean, this is a guy who has just poured his soul out about some of the most embarrassing things of his entire life, so he's got to be telling the truth. Also, Inspector Dew couldn't help but think to himself that Dr. Crippen was this little kind of passive-seeming guy who did not really seem capable of killing somebody else. But at the same time, Inspector Dew could definitely see a woman like Belle leaving Dr. Crippen the way that she did. Still, just to be thorough, Inspector Dew asked Dr. Crippen if he wouldn't mind allowing the inspector to search the property, because after all, this is a missing person case, and so we got to check everything. Dr. Crippen said, absolutely, search my house, do whatever you gotta do. And Inspector Dew would do just that. He went all over the house, looked everywhere, and he would find nothing. So the inspector told Dr. Crippen that as of now, he believed his story and that basically the case was closed, but Inspector Dew really needed to talk to Belle in order to officially close the case, because right now, everybody thought she was dead, no one had heard from her, and so that was the one missing piece. And so Dr. Crippen said that was totally fine, and he and the inspector actually worked together to draft up this little advertisement that would go in newspapers in America that basically would say, hey, Belle, if you see this, you need to contact police in London because we're looking for you. And so after the two men had come up with the language they wanted for this advertisement, Inspector Dew thanked Dr. Crippen, said he'd be in touch, and then he left. But 5 days later, when Inspector Dew went to follow up with Dr. Crippen, he discovered that Dr. Crippen and his new lover, Ethel, his assistant, were both gone. And nobody knew where they were. And this changed everything.
Did y'all not see that coming, though?
Right?
Did y'all not see this
coming from?
He was going to, all right, y'all got the police involved. It's time for us to get,
We got
and he can't go
out of
anywhere.
Dodge.
He can go back to America, get a job. He's basically a pharmacist.
Yeah, but yeah.
Like, he does medications. So I can dip and go anywhere and say, hey, I do medicine.
He said, yeah, okay, he believed that we got a couple days. We
Gotta
got
get
some
going.
time.
Yeah.
Let's go.
The Belle case. Inspector Dew couldn't help but think, Dr. Crippen and Ethel look like they're running from something. So probably they lied to me about their involvement with Belle's disappearance. And so Inspector Dew sent physical descriptions to all the newspapers and police stations all across Europe. And also he made a note to check all the ships that were bound for America in case Dr. Crippen and Ethel had decided to flee Europe that way. And while this big manhunt was just getting underway, Inspector Dew and his team went back to Dr. Crippen's house to do a much more thorough search. So police descended on Dr. Crippen's beautiful 3-story home on a quiet street, and they went inside and they tore apart everything. They flipped over mattresses, they opened up drawers and closets, they threw everything out, but they found nothing suspicious. But at some point, Inspector Dew, who was feeling really annoyed that he'd been totally duped by this doctor, he was walking down the basement steps in Dr. Crippen's house, and as he went down, he saw there were other investigators already in the basement conducting yet another fruitless search. But as Inspector Dew kind of turned the corner at the base of the basement stairs, he noticed the bricks that were laying in front of the fireplace that was in the basement just looked a little bit off, like they were maybe too new or something. And so just kind of acting on a hunch, he walked over to these bricks that were laid out right in front of this fireplace, and he's looking at them, and he grabs a poker, one of the pokers you use to move the logs around in a fire, and he just began tapping on each of the individual bricks right in front of them. And with every tap, he would hear the solid thump sound that you're hitting something hard that is beneath this brick. But as he went along, hitting each of these bricks, he eventually reached the kind of center of these bricks, and when he brought that poker down on one of those bricks, it made a hollow sound. Clearly, there was something underneath these bricks. And so Inspector Dew is super excited. He calls for his team to come over, and one by one, they begin pulling up all these bricks. And after they're all gone, they see there's this perfectly smooth layer of clay that these bricks were sitting on top of. And so Inspector Dew called for a shovel. A guy brought one over, and Dew, he took one scoop with the shovel, and immediately this horrible smell began coming out of the ground that was so gross that the guys around Inspector Dew began retching and vomiting, and before long, the entire group of investigators had basically fled the basement to get away from this horrible smell. But after composing themselves, Inspector Dew and the rest of his team put handkerchiefs over their nose and their mouths, and they went back into the house, down into the basement. They grabbed that shovel, and they continued to dig, and after just a couple of scoops, they saw what was causing this terrible smell. In this clay pit, this hole in the basement underneath the bricks, were all these human body parts in the ground. But there were no arms, there were no legs, there was no head. All you had were just the internal organs of somebody, and then also there was like a blanket of skin that looked like it had been extracted from somebody's body with near surgical precision. Now, the police could not, based on these limited remains, make an actual positive identification of who exactly this was, But they did find in this pit, along with the organs and the skin, were several strands of hair that matched Belle's. There were several pieces of pajamas that belonged to Dr. Crippen. And then also on that skin fillet they found, there was a distinctive birthmark on it that matched the one that Belle had. Also, investigators were able to determine that inside of the intestines that were found in this hole were traces of a particular kind of tranquilizer that in the weeks leading up to Belle's disappearance, Dr. Crippen was making that particular tranquilizer at his work. He mixed medicines for dentist offices. That was the tranquilizer he was working with right before Belle disappeared. Shortly after these shocking discoveries were made, Dr. Crippen and Ethel were found on a boat trying to flee the country that way, and so they would be arrested, and so ultimately Dr. Crippen would be found guilty of murdering his wife, and he would be sentenced to death. As for Ethel, she would be acquitted of any participation in the crime. However, this was not the end of the story. Far.
What?
Wow.
What?
So you telling me she was filleted? But did he say several body parts?
He just like, yeah, just like.
So basically, he probably cut her up.
Scanned her, cut her up.
Damn, that's a lot of work to do, though. To get rid of, I guess, so he
you
could
gotta
be able
have
to,
some deep-rooted anger to do something like that.
He had some.
He had some because of the way she treated him.
Of any participation in the crime. However, this was not the end of the story.
Okay.
Far from it. 100 years later, in 2010, a forensic scientist from Michigan State University fished out a piece of tissue from the remains found in Dr. Crippen's basement that had been preserved inside of a London museum. Now, this murder case had been officially closed since 1910, but the bizarre details of this case had never really fully made sense to a lot of people.
Okay.
Like, they didn't understand how or why Dr. Crippen had successfully disposed of his wife's head, her arms, her legs, all her bones. Those are all gone. Nobody ever found those. But he decided to keep her organs and her skin buried in his basement under loose bricks. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Also, if Dr. Crippen killed his wife by poisoning her, which is what is suggested from all that tranquilizer that was found in her intestines, that basically he overdosed her, then why did he dismember her afterwards? The reason killers often kill with poison is because it makes the victim's death look a bit more natural. Whereas if you mutilate someone's body, then obviously someone did it and you're calling suspicion on yourself. And so did Dr. Crippen poison his wife and then just throw that out the window and mutilated her body anyways? It just didn't make sense. So this forensic scientist from Michigan State University decided he was finally going to get some answers to this case. And so what he did is he compared the DNA from the tissue he dug out to the DNA of one of Belle's grand nieces. And when he compared the two, he saw they didn't match, which meant the body that was found in Dr. Crippen's basement was not Belle's. But that wasn't even the weirdest part. It was determined following this test by this forensic scientist that the body in Dr. Crippen's basement wasn't even female. It was a male. But to this day, no one has ever been able to identify who that body was, and Belle was never found. All we know is an innocent man, Dr. Crippen, was put to death for something he didn't do.
Or did he?
Or did he? Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
I have.
You have something today.
I have something because
you have something today. What?
Listen, shut up. Because at the end of the day, whoever body it was, that was fresh. Was it or was it not for the smell to be so potent? Like it had to be something like. Or is it because they've been under the brick so long?
Yeah.
But even if it was, it could have been like years.
No.
So it had to have been something within the recent months. Was it the ex? Was it the lover?
So what you thinking?
Was it Belle's lover?
So you thinking it's Belle? I'm saying like, what do you like?
That's what I'm trying to say. Like, did he maybe like do something like when he found out what? When he found out that Belle was having an affair, did he like do something to? Cause if he writing letters and acting like Belle in America, you can write something or.
He should have been dealt.
not even that, but I'm saying you could write something and have the lover think he coming over for bail, and you waiting on him. You do, like, he formulates and mixes these drugs. He can easily, like, inject you or get you, you know what I'm saying? Or have you, like, ingest something.
Or could possibly the DNA test been wrong.
Or could have been wrong.
Because it's been so many years and so. You never know with that. Because
As
obviously she didn't have kids. So
right.
also could have been that they're not going to have the same DNA. We don't know if they're like 100% blood related.
And that's the thing. Just because she's her niece, we don't know exactly, like, is she a niece by, like, I don't know.
Or was Belle technically not 100% related to her siblings?
Right,
you know
you never know that.
You never know that
like
factor.
Like as
we
far
don't know
as like
if she
how
was adopted or if they not share the same father figure, because then the DNA is even stripped even further. But with that, it would have shown a little bit of the same DNA.
Something, yeah.
But because Belle could have been adopted, she could have been kidnapped.
But let me say this, and then how was you able to determine? Well, I guess because he said it wasn't even female.
And so in that case,
that's what made me go to the lover. Because what other reason
it could have been him, and the reason why Belle had the photo of him is because he's no longer here. So it could have. So let me get my speech.
Oh, okay. I was just about to say something, but yeah, go ahead.
So Dr. Crippen and Belle possibly have killed this man before, or Belle killed him or something, and Dr. Crippen covered it up. That's why he slit the skin and all this stuff.
Can I say something?
Sure.
The only reason I don't feel like that's the case is because when she took the picture off the mantle, she was like, "Look, I can go back to."
We don't know that 100%. Ain't nobody still alive that was there.
Well, right, but I'm just.
We don't know that story is 1% that she said she literally took.
Okay.
We can't go off of that 1%.
Okay, well, I'm just going off of what I heard, but I get what you're saying. But at the same time, if that's the case, if she had nothing to do and this is her lover, she probably hadn't spoken to him in like a while, and she just like threatened Dr. Crippen with it or whatever the case may be, you know, just to make him jealous or to like hit below the belt or whatever the case may be. And he's not reacting to you saying all this because he like, yeah, go ahead. He's non-existent. He's not here because he probably.
But then, so basically, you saying he killed him before Belle even, or
I don't know. I'm just thinking.
Or another thing I'm thinking about, they have to have somebody. Cause why leave even her?
Yes. Did Bethel have a man?
Ethel.
I don't know. I said Bethel. Did Ethel have a man? And y'all had to get him out the way? But still, that's still like, where is Belle? Where is Belle? If after 100 years and y'all say that the person that was down there buried under the bricks was a male, who the hell was it? And where's Belle?
And did Dr. Crippen die innocent, 100% innocent man?
You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of
Or is there a possibility if there's this body in the basement, after we discovered that this body and we immediately saw this,
it could be others.
There could be evidence of Belle somewhere else, but y'all never looked
elsewhere. Y'all just found that body and assumed that it was her.
Yeah.
And never looked elsewhere in the house, under the floor.
And the reason why I say this, one reason why I'm like, the body had to be in there some type of long period of time. Yeah. Because for one, even when they were down there in the basement, they didn't smell it. I feel like it was more fresher and new. Mm-hmm. Of that, you still would have had some type of odor coming. See, I don't know how, because I never smelled a dead body before, so I don't know what it really smelled like. And even because typically, even if you did put it and hide stuff or dead body somewhere, you can still kind of get the odor.
Right.
And they were down there in the basement, not smelling any odor, even when he went back. You know what I'm saying?
True.
But as soon as he did, he smelled the odor.
But then my thing is, because if you're able to dispose of arms, legs, a head elsewhere, never to be found, 9 times out of 10, it's either in the house somewhere, or he took it like far out, and Belle could be wherever you took. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because you know how some like people like. Not saying he was a serial killer or nothing like that, because we don't have that information. It's just Belle and whoever this body is that they found. But you know how like they have these like little burial grounds where they take. But I wouldn't say that that's him, because Belle is the only person, and we're trying to figure out what happened to her, and then trying to figure out who is this male that was down there, if it actually was a male. I know 100 years you said the person really wasn't even female. I guess from the skin and from matching.
Or just the DNA test. You can tell
the DNA test,
the chromosomes. You can
yeah.
tell with that part. So now it's more for me with that regards, which it's been 100 years and the lack of DNA back then, and a lack of reporting back then, and a lack of storage of information back then. Is there any reports that we can possibly try to find of a missing male? A male that went missing, a male that was reported missing, that got overlooked. Like I said, did Ethel have a previous husband or a previous relationship?
Just some
could
type
have been
of
the
lover.
doctor, but I'm sure the doctor would have came over reported missing.
Yeah.
Because you got to think about it. He worked for a dentist.
Yeah.
There was already a head doctor there. Ethel was his assistant. Ethel was Krypton's assistant.
Yeah.
So obviously there was levels in the dentist office.
True.
But that's my thing is, if we can find more information about Ethel, maybe we can find
possibly if whoever she's connected to has come up missing.
If anybody came up missing on her end, or what happened to this lover? Because obviously y'all have to somewhere in the archives had a photo of an identification or something of who Belle X is, the one she truly, honestly, probably truly loved.
Facts.
Because that's your ex, and you cheated on your husband with them. And you still have a photo of him in it. That's weird.
That's weird.
That's very weird.
That's low.
Now, I'll say this. Typically, with situations like that, it might not be as weird if that person has deceased. So, say, for instance, she was married to the man. Well, you still cheated on your husband.
Since they've been together, I wish you better put that in your wallet if you want to.
But now I was just
I
was just saying, like, cause some chicks when they are in a relationship and the person has passed, because they had such a bond with that person, they might still move on with this person, but still feel some type of attachment to this past.
But I don't feel like that was his case.
But not this case. Yeah.
And then also my thing is, I don't feel like he died an innocent man. It's because of the simple fact, if you're innocent and you know you're innocent, you didn't know nothing that was going on. But
it's hard to fight things back then.
Huh?
It's hard to fight things back then.
No, that's not what I'm about to say. I'm just about to say, like, you wouldn't have been running if you had nothing to hide.
That's another thing. I feel like y'all would have been able to get away with it if y'all stayed a little longer.
Just if you would have stayed in your house.
Because he already searched your house. He wasn't coming back to really search.
No.
Like that ever again. He wasn't going to come back and search like that.
It was like probably like just a follow-up. Have you heard anything? Yeah. Whatever the case would be. But then you should have
gave it a little minute. And you would have been able to deal fast. And then my thing is, why y'all go, like, I ain't saying I ever do some shit like that, but my first go-to one is go straight to America, because typically that's where y'all gonna go look. Oh. My typical thing is go to another country, then from that country go to...
Right, especially since you already done put it on the table that
y'all have connection to America.
So
we're going to America, but I'm not going to America from here.
Yeah.
I'm going from here. I'm going somewhere else because y'all not looking in that direction. Sure. Then I'm gonna eventually find my way to America. But it's 1910s. I don't know how things can work to even maneuver like that.
Yeah, but I just feel like he was hiding something because y'all are running from something. You left
he knew that
back.
body was in there.
Yeah.
He knew that was in there. But how long has them bricks been placed?
True.
And
then my only question is, who is this person? And where the hell is Belle?
You ain't gonna never find out.
Nah.
Them two questions
you're not going to. Because after 100 years, this is all y'all have, is that it wasn't even her.
Because typically with what it is, whoever it is, that body, you didn't want that person to be able to be identified.
Yeah.
Because you got to think about it. You skin to skin, then keep any hands, because hands probably even back then was able to be identified some type of way.
Right.
No head, so you can't do teeth or any, you know what I'm saying?
They had no ligaments. Of the face. But then they said that the body that they found under the bricks had a birthmark just like the one Belle had. Do you remember that? So I'm just trying to...
People can be over.
That's what I'm saying. Y'all like making it like this. Yep, that's definitely it. You know, because there's so much you had to work with to identify, people. So.
And to be honest, let's all be honest. They got a lot of cases wrong back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Trying to follow clues that wasn't necessarily 100% a clue. It was more of a hunch, not necessarily definite.
Yeah.
Now, would I have put him on trial for death without having a definite certain? Nah. But, you know, the death penalty thing is very much so. I don't think you should have gave Dr. Krypton death.
You said at least to give him. I mean,
could have gave him life.
But we found the dead. We found.
There's been plenty of people put on life just for a dead body.
Yeah, in your house.
And maybe he would eventually confess if he had more time. But if y'all just gonna hang the man, he ain't got time to think about his crime to even say, "Hey, I need to get this off my chest." Because typically back then, when they hang people, all right, you're sentenced to death. Next week, we're hanging you.
It was quick.
Yeah.
The stories we've heard.
Yeah. Like those situations, even the next day or two, we're going to get prepped and put the story out and you're dead. And nowadays, it's a longer process. You know what I'm saying? And then maybe, hopefully, they come out and confess, and some of them end up confessing.
Or some new evidence come about, and like, you know, something. But yeah, that's crazy.
For sure, man. But hey, y'all, spam us up in the comments, man. Let us know y'all thoughts about it in the comment section down below. But as always, y'all know how I go, man. I do go by the name DJ New Kid. This is
Here in the house.
We are.
Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my folks. Dollar, 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 dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar, 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 dollar.